My friends, have you ever walked away from a situation thinking, I should have said something? That quiet ache inside that whispers, why did I stay silent? Silence can be golden, but in the wrong moment, it can also be a burden that weighs on the soul. You see, silence is powerful, but only when used with wisdom. There are moments when being silent makes you peaceful, and there are moments when being silent makes you complicit. Sometimes we stay quiet not because we are calm, but because we are scared. Scared to offend, scared to lose, scared to stand alone. But the truth is, when you stay silent in front of what's wrong, your silence doesn't protect peace, it protects the problem. Life is not asking you to be loud, it's asking you to be clear. There are times when silence is strength, but there are also times when silence is surrender. Today, let's reflect together on those 5 moments when silence is not golden, but dangerous. When your voice is not just needed, it's necessary. Let's explore how speaking your truth with calmness and compassion can lead you from days forever wandering to days fully awake. When you witness injustice unfolding before your eyes, silence can become the loudest noise of all. It echoes in your conscience long after the moment has passed. We often tell ourselves, it's not my problem, or someone else will speak up. But deep down, a quiet discomfort whispers that we should have done something. That whisper doesn't fade easily. It lingers, reminding us that sometimes silence is not peace, it is permission. In a world that often rewards comfort over courage, it takes real strength to speak when silence feels safer. Imagine a crowded bus where an elderly man struggles to stand and everyone looks away pretending not to notice. Or a workplace where someone is being disrespected and people turn their eyes to their screens. We justify our silence with excuses like, I don't want to get involved. But the truth is, involvement is what keeps humanity alive. When you choose to speak for what's right, you're not just helping someone, you're shaping the culture around you. You're setting a tone that kindness is not weakness, that courage doesn't always shout. It sometimes just calmly says, this isn't right. I remember a young man who once told me, I saw my friend being bullied every day in school. I thought if I stayed silent, the bullies would stop noticing me. But years later, I still remember his eyes looking at me as if asking, why didn't you say something? His silence protected him from discomfort in that moment, but left him with regret for years. And isn't that how life works? When we choose silence over courage, the moment passes, but the memory doesn't. We must understand that speaking up doesn't mean being loud or aggressive. It means being clear and compassionate. When injustice arises, we don't need to fight with anger. We need to respond with awareness. The tone of your voice doesn't determine its power. Your intention does. A soft but firm, that's not okay, can change a situation more than 1,000 silent stares. The key is to speak from a place of principle, not pride. There's a story of a simple gardener who worked at a big estate. One day, he noticed his employer unfairly shouting at another worker for something that wasn't his fault. The gardener, humble and quiet by nature, gathered his courage and said, Sir, I think there's been a mistake. It wasn't him. The entire room went silent. The employer turned, surprised, but then realized the truth. Later, the gardener said, I was scared, but I knew that my silence would have been more painful than my fear. His words didn't just protect a fellow worker, they planted a seed of justice in everyone who watched. We all have these moments in life where our silence feels easier, but deep down our heart aches to speak. Maybe it's a friend who's treated unfairly, a colleague who's struggling silently, or even a stranger who needs someone to stand beside them. In those moments, remember, your silence could be someone else's suffering. Speak, not to prove you are right, but to remind others that kindness still has a voice. Many people confuse silence with peace. But peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of fairness. True peace is born when people have the courage to speak up with compassion. Think about it. Every great change in the world began when someone decided to no longer stay silent. When someone said, "Enough." Those who spoke didn't do it because it was easy. They did it because their conscience wouldn't allow them to rest. You don't have to stand on a stage to speak up. Sometimes, your act of courage is small and quiet. A simple act of defending someone, refusing to laugh at a cruel joke, or choosing honesty in a room full of pretense. These are the everyday choices that define your character. The world doesn't always need more voices. It needs more genuine hearts that dare to use theirs when it matters most. But remember, speaking up doesn't mean speaking against everyone. It means speaking for what's right. It's not about creating conflict. It's about creating clarity. You can still be calm, still be kind, and still be firm. Even when your voice trembles, let it tremble with truth. There is strength in gentle conviction. The next time you see injustice, don't rush, don't react. Pause and ask your heart, will my silence serve peace or protect pain? If your heart feels uneasy, that's life's gentle nudge telling you to act. Because true spirituality isn't just about meditation or prayer, it's about living in alignment with truth and compassion. God resides in the conscience that speaks through you when you stand for what's right. And yes, sometimes you will face criticism. People might misunderstand you or call you emotional. But that's okay. Remember, every voice that stands for justice faces resistance before it creates change. The goal is not to please everyone. It's to sleep peacefully, knowing you didn't betray your inner truth. So, the next time life puts you in a situation where silence feels comfortable, but your conscience feels restless, choose your conscience. Because silence might save you from confrontation, but truth will save you from regret. Speak not because you want to be heard, but because your silence might hurt someone who needs your voice. Let your courage be calm, your truth be kind, and your heart be fearless. When you refuse to stay silent in front of injustice, you don't just speak for others. You remind humanity that compassion still has a sound. There comes a point in life when your values will be tested, not in grand dramatic ways, but in small everyday moments. And it's in those quiet tests that your true character is revealed. You see, it's easy to speak of honesty, kindness, and integrity when everything is convenient. But what about when staying true to your values costs you comfort, opportunities, or relationships? That's when silence becomes dangerous. Because when you stay silent while your principles are being compromised, you slowly start to drift away from the person you promised yourself to be. There are times when people will expect you to bend a little, to adjust your values, just this once. They might say, "Everyone does it," or "It's not a big deal." But every time you compromise what's right for what's easy, a small part of your inner peace is traded away. You can't see it immediately, but you feel it, a quiet discomfort, a subtle uneasiness that doesn't let you rest fully. You begin to sense that something inside you is misaligned, and that's the voice of your conscience reminding you that no success is worth losing your self-respect. I once met a man who worked in a company where bending the rules was considered smart business. At first, he kept quiet. He told himself he was just following orders, that it wasn't his place to question things. But as time passed, he noticed his silence was slowly stealing his joy. He couldn't sleep peacefully. He was earning well, but he felt poor in spirit. One day he decided to speak up, not loudly but firmly. He said, "I can't do this anymore. It doesn't feel right." It wasn't an easy decision. He faced judgment and even lost that job. But years later, he told me, "That was the day I regained my dignity. I may have lost income, but I found my peace." And isn't that what true success really means? To go to bed each night knowing that you didn't betray your inner truth. In life, you will often be surrounded by people who measure strength by how flexible you are with your morals. They will tell you to just compromise or go with the flow. But what they forget is that rivers that go with the flow eventually reach the sea and lose their identity. The only water that stands tall and distinct is the one that refuses to blend, that becomes the ice on a mountain peak, still pure, unshaken. So, when your values are being tested, remind yourself that you are not here to please the world. You are here to please your soul. Sometimes the world won't applaud your integrity, it might even mock it. People may misunderstand your honesty, call you stubborn, or label your discipline as pride. But in moments like that, remember that every great soul who stood for truth was first misunderstood. Standing by your principles doesn't mean you are rigid. It means you are rooted. And when a tree is rooted deeply, storms can shake its branches, but they can never uproot its core. There's a story of a young woman who worked as a designer. Her manager once asked her to copy a competitor's concept and pass it off as her own. She hesitated but eventually refused. She said, "If I have to steal someone's idea to shine, then I don't deserve the light." Her manager was angry. She lost that project. But a few months later, her honesty was noticed by another company that admired her integrity. She not only got a better opportunity, but also carried with her a sense of self-worth that money can never buy. Her silence would have protected her job, but her voice protected her values. Our values are like our spiritual fingerprints. They define who we are when no one is watching. But silence in moments of moral testing is like erasing those fingerprints one by one. When you compromise once, it becomes easier to do it again. Slowly, your sense of self becomes blurry. But when you stand up for your beliefs, something magical happens. You grow stronger inside. Even if the world doesn't validate you, the divine does. You begin to feel guided, supported, and anchored by an invisible grace that rewards truthfulness. Sometimes we justify our silence by saying, "It's not my fight," or "Why should I bother?" But every time you protect your values, you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting the energy of goodness in the world. When you say no to dishonesty, you're saying yes to light. When you choose compassion over convenience, you create a ripple that silently encourages others to do the same. Your integrity may not trend, but it transforms. The reality is that standing by your values isn't always comfortable. It might isolate you for a while, make you feel like you're walking alone. But remember this, the path of truth is narrow not because few are invited, but because few have the courage to walk it. Yet those who walk it walk with peace, and peace is far greater than popularity. So, the next time you find yourself in a situation where your values are being tested, pause. Listen to the gentle voice within that says, "This is not who you are." Don't let silence cover that voice. Speak gently, Act firmly and stay aligned with your truth. Because integrity whispered in quiet corners is still louder than lies shouted from rooftops. And one day, when you look back on your life, you will realize that the moments you are most proud of are not when you gain something, but when you refuse to lose yourself. Those are the moments that define strength, the silent victories that happen when your conscience wins over convenience. Speak for your values, even if your voice shakes, for your truth doesn't need volume, it just needs courage. There are moments in life when someone we care about is silently breaking inside, and we can sense it. But we stay quiet, not because we don't care, but because we don't know what to say. We assume that silence is comfort, that giving space is support. But sometimes silence isn't golden, it's heavy. When someone you love is hurting, your silence can become a wall instead of a bridge. And in those moments, a few gentle words can mean more than all the advice in the world. We live in a world where everyone is talking, but very few are truly connecting. People post pictures, smiling online, while hiding storms in their hearts. You might sit next to a friend who seems fine, but deep down they're fighting a battle you can't see. And often, what they need is not someone to fix them, but someone to notice them. Someone to say, I see you. I feel your pain. You're not alone. Those simple words can become a light in someone's darkest night. There was once a young woman who used to laugh the loudest among her friends. Everyone thought she was full of life, always the one to cheer others up. But one evening, her best friend noticed something. Her laughter didn't reach her eyes anymore. It sounded empty. Instead of ignoring it, he asked softly, "Are you okay?" At first, she smiled and said yes. But he didn't let the conversation drift away. He said, "I don't mean to intrude, but you don't seem like yourself lately." That moment broke her silence. She started to cry and admitted she'd been struggling for months. That one question, that one small act of care, saved her from sinking deeper into loneliness. Sometimes, it takes just one voice of compassion to help another person find theirs again. When people are hurting, they don't always ask for help directly. They leave hints, subtle cues, hoping someone will notice. They talk a little less, smile a little differently, withdraw from conversations. But when we're too caught up in our own noise, we miss the quiet signals. We assume everything is fine because they didn't say otherwise. Yet love is not about waiting for someone to ask. It's about being aware enough to feel their unspoken pain. In those times, don't worry about saying the perfect words. Just be there. Your presence can speak louder than advice. A hand on their shoulder, a small message saying, "I'm thinking of you," or a cup of tea shared in silence can mean more than 1,000 motivational quotes. Love doesn't always need solutions, it needs sincerity. Sometimes, the most powerful way to help someone heal is to remind them that they are seen, valued, and cared for. I remember once visiting an elderly man in a hospital. He had no family nearby, and when I asked if anyone had come to visit him, he smiled faintly and said, "No one remembers me anymore." I sat with him for an hour, just listening. No big words, no preaching. Before I left, he took my hand and said, "You didn't say much, but your silence spoke warmth." That day I realized something profound. When silence is filled with empathy, it becomes healing. But when silence is filled with indifference, it becomes pain. In relationships, be it friendship, family, or love, we often assume the people closest to us already know how we feel. We think, they know I care, or they'll tell me if they need me. But sometimes, the people who seem the strongest are the ones most in need of gentle words. Never underestimate the power of asking, "How are you, really?" Those words can open doors that pain has locked for years. When someone you love is hurting, don't disappear just because you feel helpless. You don't need to have answers. You just need to be available. When they speak, listen with your heart, not your judgment. Don't rush to fix their pain. Let them feel safe enough to express it. Healing doesn't happen when you talk over someone's wounds. It happens when you sit beside them in their silence. And sometimes, the one who needs your compassion might not be someone else. It might be you. You may have been the one who's been holding it all together, pretending you're fine, smiling for everyone else. In those moments, don't stay silent with yourself either. Talk to someone you trust. Speak to life, to God, to the friend who truly listens. You don't have to suffer in silence. When you open your heart, you invite healing to flow through it. Life teaches us that love is not about grand gestures. It's about being present when presence matters most. It's about noticing the pain behind someone's smile, about offering your voice when someone has lost theirs. Even if your words are small, let them come from love. A whisper of empathy can echo in someone's soul far longer than you realize. So the next time you sense that someone you love is hurting, don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect words. Just reach out. Even a simple, "I'm here for you," can make the difference between someone giving up and someone holding on. Your voice might be the bridge that carries them from despair to hope. Never stay silent when someone you love is hurting, because your silence could deepen their loneliness. But your compassion could awaken their healing. Be the kind of person whose words bring comfort, whose presence brings peace, and whose heart reminds others that love still listens. There is a quiet kind of suffering that many people carry. The struggle of pretending everything is fine when inside the heart feels heavy. We've all been there, haven't we? Smiling when we want to cry, saying, "I'm okay," when we're not. Trying to look strong when we're breaking inside. And one of the biggest reasons for this silent suffering is that we're afraid to ask for help. We think asking for help means we are weak, incapable, or less. But the truth is, asking for help is one of the most courageous acts a human being can perform. It's not a sign of failure. It's a declaration that you are human, and humans are meant to support one another. The world has taught us to wear masks of strength, to always look composed, to handle everything alone. We've been told, "Be strong, don't burden others, or you'll figure it out." But strength doesn't mean suffering in silence. Strength means knowing when to speak, when to reach out, when to say, "I can't do this alone." Even the strongest trees need sunlight, water, and soil to thrive. In the same way, even the strongest souls need support, understanding, and love to grow. Imagine a person walking through a storm, drenched and shivering, but refusing to ask for shelter because they believe it's a sign of weakness. Isn't that what many of us do with our struggles? We walk through emotional storms, drenched in stress, soaked in anxiety, all because we don't want others to see us vulnerable. But vulnerability is not weakness. It's truth. It's the heart saying, "I'm ready to be real." I remember a young woman who once shared her story of burnout. She was hardworking, driven, always helping others, but never asking for help herself. One day, she fainted at work from exhaustion. When her friends rushed her to the hospital, she broke down crying and said, "I didn't want anyone to think I couldn't handle it." But when she finally started opening up, about her struggles, she found comfort she never knew she needed. Her family began to understand her more, her friends offered genuine support, and most importantly, she felt human again. She said, "Asking for help didn't make me small, it made me whole." In our lives, there will be days when the weight feels too heavy to carry alone. Those are the days when you must remember you don't have to be the hero all the time. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't need to have it all figured out. Sometimes it's okay to let someone else hold your hand through the storm. Asking for help doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're giving life another chance to reach you through someone else's heart. When we suffer in silence, we isolate ourselves from the very love that could heal us. We close doors that were meant to open blessings. Help doesn't always come as advice, sometimes it comes as presence, a friend sitting quietly with you, a parent's reassuring hug, a mentor's gentle guidance. But if you never ask, you might never receive it. Even the divine teaches us to ask, to seek, to knock, because asking is a form of trust. It's saying, "I believe there's something or someone who can help me find my way again." I met an elderly man once who had lost his wife. For months, he withdrew from everyone. He didn't speak, didn't attend family gatherings, didn't share his grief. When I asked him why, he said, "I didn't want to trouble anyone. Everyone has their own problems." Later, when he finally opened up to his daughter about how lonely he felt, she hugged him and cried, saying, "All I wanted was for you to tell me you needed me." Sometimes, when we don't ask for help, we deny others the opportunity to love us. We forget that allowing someone to help is also an act of giving. It gives them the chance to express compassion, to be there for us, to feel needed. There's also a kind of help that isn't external. It's spiritual. It's when you sit in silence and say to life, "I can't handle this alone, please guide me." That surrender is powerful. It's not defeat, it's wisdom. It's understanding that the strength you need doesn't always come from your own effort, but from opening your heart to something greater. When you ask life or the divine for guidance, help often comes in the most unexpected ways. A book that touches your heart, a stranger's kind word, a sudden moment of clarity. Asking for help teaches humility. It reminds us that we are interconnected, that no one is self-sufficient. The sun doesn't shine for itself, rivers don't flow for themselves, trees don't bear fruit for themselves. Everything in nature exists to give and receive. Why then do we think we must carry our burdens alone? When you open up and let others help you, you allow love to flow freely through your life. So, if you're struggling today, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, don't bottle it up. Reach out, talk to someone you trust. Let your words release the pain you've been holding. You'll be surprised how many people want to help, how many hearts are waiting to listen. And even if no one understands fully, the simple act of sharing your burden lightens it. And when someone else comes to you for help, don't judge them. Listen with kindness. Remember how much courage it takes to say, "I need help." Be the kind of person who makes it safe for others to ask, because that's how healing spreads from one open heart to another. Never stay silent when you need help, because silence may seem like strength in the moment, but it builds invisible walls that block healing. Speak up, not for sympathy, but for strength. Asking for help isn't the end of your journey, it's often the beginning of your healing. And one day, when you've healed, you'll become the voice that helps someone else find their courage to ask too.